Well, good afternoon. As our guests continue to trickle in, we're going to get started shortly. We appreciate your time today and look forward to sharing important information about our retail water and sewer rates. We'll be getting started momentarily. We know your time is valuable, so we want to make the most of it. And since it is 4 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you and thank you for being here. My name is Sarah McDonald. I'm Western Water's Assistant General Manager of Communications and Customer Experience, and I'm going to be moderating today's discussion. Again, I want to thank you for joining us to learn more about our water retail rates and sewer rate proposal and how this might affect your bill in the coming months and years. I do want to reinforce that we're not here to attempt to make everyone happy about rising costs, but instead we're here to accomplish three things. One, to provide clear, open information. We want to also listen to your concerns and provide an opportunity to answer any of your questions. We also have several of our board members here joining us today. They're here to listen because this isn't a formal board workshop or meeting and rather a community information session. Our board will not be participating, but again, they're here to hear your conversation. From Division 1, we have Director Mike Gardner. Division 2, we have Director Gracie Torres listening in. Division 3, we have Director Brenda Denstead. Division 4, we have Director Fazia Rizvi, and Division 5, Laura Roten. Again, they're here to listen. And of course, at any time, whether today or in the future, you're welcome to contact any of our board members. And we will be placing their direct contact information in the chat on Zoom today. So you're able to reach out to them if your questions aren't answered here today. We know your time is valuable. So if we can go to the next slide. We have planned a full agenda to make sure you get the most from this session. You'll have a chance to engage in open discussion with us and learn from the facts behind your proposed rate adjustment. So I do have a few housekeeping items before we get into it. I want to let you know that this session is being recorded. So please keep that in mind if you're on camera, using your audio, or submitting questions to our chat. All attendees will be muted just to reduce our background noise. But during Q&A, when we open it up for Q&A, you can turn on your camera and mic if you'd like to be called on, or you can stay off camera and type your questions anytime in our Zoom chat. We will have staff monitoring your questions, and we'll be able to present them to the panel after the presentation. Everything shared this afternoon, and including our previous workshops and board meeting recordings, will be made available on our website because we want to make this information as accessible as possible. Next slide. To kick us off, we have a short poll that we'd like you to participate in so that we can really make sure this presentation is focused on answering your questions. So to participate in this poll, you're going to grab your phone, open the camera app, and scan our QR code. Alternatively, you can visit slido.com and enter the code number you see here on the screen. You're going to be asked to rank the questions in order of importance to you. So I'll give you a minute to get that open on your phone. But if you are having trouble, no worries. You can go ahead and enter the question or the answers into our chat, and we'll monitor that way as well. So we'll give you a minute to get your poll up on your phones. As we do that, we want to let you know this poll is going to be really simple, helping us focus the conversation on what matters most to you. Again, you'll also be able to submit responses into our chat if you're struggling with the feature. So go ahead and next slide. So we're asking you to rank the questions in order of importance to you. So in order of importance, let us know what you care about most learning today. Why is the cost of water going up? What will my bill look like after this rate increase? I hardly use any water, but my bill continues to be the same. There we go. I see answers coming in as we speak. I'll give it a few more minutes just so we can really get a sense for what you care about most today. And you're probably asking me, Sarah, what about option number 5, other? Not to worry, we will have time for your additional questions. We expect there'll be many at the end of this Oh, right. So as they're coming in, it looks like a majority of you joining us today want to understand what your bill is going to look like after this rate increase. But there's still a lot of interest in understanding why your bill looks high, even though you save water. So we'll be sure to cover both of those in our presentation today or at the end during our Q&A with the panel. Next slide. Thank you for your participation. That will certainly help us guide our presentation. I want to share that we're also joined here today by our core team of experts, our general manager, Craig Miller. We have our assistant general manager and CFO, Rick Aragon, and our strategic communications manager, Grace Cardenas. Each of them today will speak during the presentation and be available to answer your questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Craig Miller, our general manager, to kick off our agenda today.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Great introduction, and hopefully we can answer all those questions before we're done here today. So here's where we're going in the presentation. We're going to talk about what your bill supports, why your water costs more. We're going to talk about the expertise that it takes to serve water to our community. We're going to talk about the proposed residential bill impacts, customer support, what's next in the schedule, and then we'll take Q&A. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a little bit out of order compared to normal, but we thought everyone's going to want to know what their rates are going to be. So let's just tell them right up front so everyone's not anticipating for the entire presentation and not listening. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about what drives these rate increases. So if you're in our Riverside service area, we're developing a 4-year rate program. The rates in Riverside are going up at 7.3% to about 7% over the 4-year period. That's each year. If you're a Marietta customer, you're seeing 5.8 to 6.0% in your rates. A lot of people want to know, well, what's the dollar impact? Well, if you're an average customer, now people ask what's average, a median customer, we kind of pick someone right in the middle. It looks like it's going to cost about $13 per month more for an average customer if you're in Riverside, and about $10 to $12 more in Marietta. So, okay, so that's the answer to the presentation. That's the bottom line. But our job here, as much as I dislike rate adjustments, I don't like them in my own water provider. We know the customers don't like it, but there is a reality that we have to pay our bills as a water agency, and we are in this for the long haul. And our job is to make sure we're planning water for not just today, but for our grandchildren and beyond. And so all of that's incorporated into our rate adjustments. And so it's really important that we keep track or keep on pace with inflation. And we're also building in investment in future water supply. So let us go on now and we'll start explaining how we got to these rates. Next slide. So what does your bill support? Next slide. So here's a picture of our service area. We go from Eastvale all the way down to the San Diego border and Temecula. You can see the 5 divisions of our directors. The little hatched areas you see on the presentation in Riverside and Marietta are where we are the direct water retailer. In the other areas, we're the wholesaler of water. So if Norco or Corona or Lake Elsinore or the city of Riverside or Eastvale want to buy imported water, they buy it through us, and they're the direct provider. So we wear both a wholesaler hat and a retailer hat. In our service area, we serve about 1 million people. We serve a lot of water, 25 billion gallons of water per year. We maintain and invest in $1.2 billion worth of assets to get that water to your home. Our mix of water is about a 60-40 split of 60% imported water, 40% local water. Keep track of those numbers. That's important in our story. There's a big difference between imported water and local water, and that is really a driver for the cost that you incur as a customer of Westerns. Next slide, please. All right, so let's start with where your water is coming from. So I think this graphic does a really good job of explaining kind of the complexity of water in Southern California. And so 60% of our water is imported water for us in our service area. It's coming from Lake Oroville. So it starts way in the northern part of the state. That water, every drop of that water travels, it's captured in Lake Oroville, it's discharged from Lake Oroville, it travels downstream through rivers, through the Sacramento Delta, pumped into the Central Valley Aqueduct. You see it when you drive up the 5 towards the Bay Area. That's your water moving towards Southern California, pumped over the mountains by Metropolitan Water District and the State Water Project, and finally treated here in Southern California by Metropolitan. After it's treated, it's delivered to Western, and that is treated water. That's 60% of our water. So it's coming a long way. And as you might imagine, there's a lot of costs that are incurred to get water here, and that water is all, or that those costs to get water here are all incorporated into the cost of the water that we buy from Metropolitan. Metropolitan is our state water contract representative. So that whole system is operated by the state contractors, and Metropolitan's the largest contractor. They actually have about 50% of the supply of the state water contract. So we buy that water from Metropolitan. Metropolitan also provides water from the Colorado River. We don't really get our drinking water from the Colorado River. We do get some non-potable or irrigation water from the Colorado River. So we have both, but the drinking water side is coming from Northern California. That's the 60%. Now the 40% is our local water supply, and local water supply is groundwater. Now, some agencies have groundwater right under their feet. Our Murrieta service area has groundwater right below our service area. However, in Riverside, we don't. We're up on a hill, on a rock. There's no groundwater. So our local water is not really under our feet. We're having to reach into other groundwater basins for that local water. We reach into the Chino Basin, the Riverside Arlington Basin, and the San Bernardino Basin. And so in order to get that water out of the ground and into our distribution system, we have to participate with other agencies and develop agreements to share facilities, wheel water through their facilities, acquire the rights, the treatment, and then it's delivered to us. Why am I telling you all that? Because all of those things have a cost associated with them, because we're borrowing other agencies' facilities, or pumping, or we're leasing water rights. So it escalates the local groundwater cost more than what other agencies that have water right underneath their feet. So our Riverside service area, unfortunately, pays those extra costs, but it's less than Metropolitan. So every acre foot of local water we develop saves our customers money and builds our resiliency and our protection against natural disasters or water quality impacts from any one source. Let's go to the next slide. So where does your money go? So if you're in Riverside, I talked a lot about water moving 500 miles, the cost of local groundwater. About half of the money that we collect in rates goes to purchasing those drops of water. We actually acquire the product. 41% goes to the operations of the system. That's maintaining the pipelines, the meters, the valves, the reservoirs. It's all the staff required to move water through the system. It's all the staff required to plan our future water resources. And then about 9% of that dollar that we get from a customer goes to infrastructure investment. So we've got hundreds of miles of infrastructure that we have to maintain and replace. And so that 9% goes to replacing those assets so that we're ready for the future and that we can continue to serve a safe, reliable supply of water. If you're in the Murrieta service area, a little less goes to purchasing the water because that local water is right underneath our feet. They have a similar mix of imported water to local water, but the local water is less expensive. Half the money goes into operating the system and maintaining the system. And in Murrieta, a little more money goes into developing wells, groundwater wells, and 12% goes into that infrastructure investment. Keep in mind, it's really important to remember this, but we maintain a system that operates rain or shine, without fail, every day, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. We always have water available when our customers turn the faucet. That takes an investment in your water system to ensure that continues to happen. Next slide. The rate development process is complex, and it's quite a long process, actually. There's an enormous amount of calculations that go into developing our rates. A huge amount of planning as to what amount of the rates are going into investment in future water supply projects, what goes into maintenance of our system, what goes into covering the costs of delivering water today. So there's an enormous comprehensive analysis that goes into that. By our staff, we work on this for a year to get to this point of developing a 4-year rate proposal. Huge amount of work. It's not just our staff. We bring in independent expertise. So there are consultants that spend their entire career doing cost of service studies and determining exactly what the cost needs to be to continue to serve water. So we utilize our own staff expertise. We bring in consultants. And then after we get work back from the consultants, we spend an enormous amount of time, both internally with staff, making sure every assumption's right. And then we spend a lot of time with our board of directors to present our assumptions, the costs, all of our expectations and predictions about the future. And that all goes into developing the 4-year rate proposal that we're presenting today. Next slide, please. So why does your water continue to increase in costs? I'm going to let our CFO, Rick Aragon, talk about this. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay. Thank you, Craig.
Go ahead, Rick.
So far we've heard the what, which is what Craig introduced on the rate increases that are being put forward as a proposal, that either 7% or 6% number. This section is really to get to the why. Why is it necessary, and what have we done to try and keep that as low as possible? And so it really comes down to 3 primary reasons, and really a hard truth underlying it all, which is we face the same reality that our customers do, which is things are just getting more expensive. And so as our bills go up, we only have one source really of revenue to provide the service, which is the customers that benefit from it. And so the primary reason is going to be inflation, just things are getting more expensive in the broad category of the things that we need to provide the service, whether that's the energy to move the water or the labor of the professionals necessary to operate the equipment or do the studies, or the supplies or the equipment that we need to run the system, or even the consultants and contractors to help us in various different ways. The other piece is what Craig mentioned, which is typically half of our budget goes to paying another entity to bring it into our region, which is Metropolitan, and those costs are going up, which we'll get into more details on. And then lastly, as our rules change, the rules that are imposed on us, things like water quality, we have to adjust to that. And in this particular rate proposal, we do have the impact of having less local supply available than we would have had previously. And that means we have to buy more costly imported water, or we have to invest in treatment to get it to standards or maintain standards, and that's just more expensive. So next slide, please. So at the bottom of this is that hard reality I was mentioning, which is costs are just going up. And so this slide really represents the broad nature of that. And these numbers are all about what we have already seen in the last 5 years. So as an average, we've seen our broad basket of costs from supplies and labor and these kinds of things increase 5% every year, which is well above the historical inflation we'd seen in the prior period. But we all saw costs going up quite a bit after COVID and supply crunches. And so we've seen those costs go up. But even more specifically, which applies to a water district, is how much that we pay for energy. Water is extremely heavy. We don't give it all the credit that it deserves. But a typical home in our area is getting roughly 140,000 pounds of water delivered to it every single month. And as Craig mentioned, that's coming not from under our feet, but from way up in Northern California, and it actually crosses mountain ranges and everything else. And so even here, we have to pump it up the hill or pull it out of the ground or move it around the service area. And so energy is a big factor, and that's completely outside of our control. We're subject to the rates that we receive from Edison or from RPU. And so those rate increases, just like you've seen on your bills, have not been normal inflation. For us, they've been on average 10% per year. And then lastly, a big part of our business is infrastructure. Craig mentioned over $1 billion worth of infrastructure. Well, that translates into large projects that we need to do to either replace that or improve it. And so the project costs, contractors and construction has been well above inflation as well. And so we've seen in the last 5 years an average of 8% per year, which is more than typical supplies and what have you. But even more present is that all of these costs are expected to continue to grow. This isn't just what we've seen so far. One particular thing which is critical to our business is the ability to get chlorine and bleach. And so those costs, for instance, are similar to what we've seen in our household with eggs, going up 2, 3, 4 times in cost. And so for bleach for us is 3 times the cost as what it was just even 5 years ago. And even on particular projects, especially things like specialty equipment, we've seen a generator project even recently go from what we thought would be $1 million a few years ago to almost $3 million. And so we've seen these pressures in just about every nature and what it takes to provide water and sewer service. Next slide, please. More specifically on what's half of our budget, which is the cost of buying water from Metropolitan. We've seen tremendous rate pressures from them. Historically, we've seen those rates double over the last 15 years. And that reflects the reality of what it takes to run a large-scale water utility that has a lot of infrastructure, which is that no matter what, whether the pipeline that we're using to deliver the water is full, half full, or not very full at all, we still need to maintain it, and we need to fix it when it breaks, and we need to maintain the pumps and everything else necessary. So we are a business of fixed costs, which don't change depending on the amount of water running through it. And so Metropolitan has seen its sales drop by about half during this period, which means they've doubled their rates to make up for the revenue to maintain the service to bring water into our region. And so we've seen that as rate pressure that we have to directly pass on. But we wish that it would have ended with history and not continued on, but there still remains significant rate pressures going forward. And we're projecting an average of 7% per year, which, if that sounds familiar, that's what we're asking of our customers going forward as our rates to pay to Metropolitan. And so that's the primary pressure. The good news on the bottom of the chart, the yellow and dark line, are the costs of the local water that Craig mentioned that we worked really hard to be able to secure from the broader region, even if it's not under our feet. And so those costs on average are about half the cost. And they also don't raise as much per year as what we've seen from Metropolitan. So for every bit of local water that we can get, that helps save our customers money and reduce the rates that we need to pass on. So all of that has come to benefit our customers. We just wish there was more available, and we're working hard at getting what we can. Next slide. So this slide goes to address the general sort of question on where does my dollar go every time I use water and I see that rate on my bill. Craig addressed the overall picture of our finances, but just to address the concern. So our most common rate is our outdoor rate for outdoor water usage. It's also fully imported water. And so for every dollar that we're getting from our customers on those rates as they use water, the next month, 92 cents of that goes immediately back out to pay our provider. And only about 8 cents of that stays with Western to operate the system that gets it to your home or business. Next slide. So everything we've talked about so far is addressing the things that we can't control, whether that's the price of bleach and chlorine, whether that's the cost of our water bringing into the region from Metropolitan, or just the economy in general and the things that we struggle against. But we've been working very hard to do everything we can. And so this breaks down to a couple of major areas that we've seen tremendous success in either getting external funding, such as grant funding. In the last 5 years alone, the district's been able to be awarded $70 million. All of that going especially for projects, very necessary projects, either to improve the system or replace the system or address risks. All of that would have otherwise had to have been on water bills, and now it doesn't, because that's being paid from partners with the state or the federal government. We also have been able to grab a hold of extra supplies of that local water and sock it away for especially dry year time, so that when those years come, we have an extra supply to pull from, all of which is less than the cost of imported water. So we've been actively doing deals, bringing it into the region and storing it away for the non-rainy day coming up in the future. And then really just a concerted effort to try and do things smarter, use technology, get better information to that, and come up with just good ideas on how to do things better in the future. And the way that that's looked in a couple of different areas is one, in general, we've had universities come to help us, as well as consultants, study the exact movement of water in our system. And so we've actively worked to try and not use or move water when it's the highest price of electricity during certain parts of the day. Use our big storage tanks and put it in there when it's cheaper. And so by doing that, we save hundreds of thousands of dollars at least per year. And that's on an ongoing basis. We've also looked at just how we operate our wastewater, our sewer treatment plants, which we'll talk more about. And so even though the price of chlorine has gone through the roof, we've tried as hard as we can to use the least amount as possible. And so by taking some great ideas from staff and implementing them, as well as being able to leverage even natural gas or gas coming from the treatment plants themselves through that process, instead of having to buy natural gas from the utility. Overall, of about $500,000 a year in savings coming from just improvements and better ideas being implemented. We also have a concerted effort to try and be proactive, where spending money today saves all of our customers tomorrow. And that's in our mainline pipes. We recognize it's an aging system. We hate it when the lines break and they disrupt our communities. And so we try and get ahead of that. And specifically, besides the disruption, it's much more efficient to try and be proactive, to plan around a pipeline coming out and being replaced, than it is to respond to it on an emergency basis. Usually it's 5 times or more expensive if we have to do it on an emergency basis than being proactive. So we're spending $5 million a year proactively going through the system in our riskiest parts to try and address that. And then lastly, we do receive a share of property taxes coming from the region and our community members of existing property taxes. And so we turn around and directly use those revenues to offset the rates that we're asking for. So it goes right back to the communities that it's coming from, as well as going to projects that we'd otherwise have to put on water bills to make sure that the system is reliable. Next slide. So everything so far, we've talked about water, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the sewer service, which is equally as important, that we provide. And hopefully you've never had to think about this. That's our number one goal, is this service is one that should go unnoticed, which is why we don't often think about it. So whether it's flushing a toilet or using the shower or a dishwasher, all of those things end up being and requiring a tremendous infrastructure system behind the scenes to deal with that. And so what that really entails is a whole system to collect those sewer flows, to bring them to wastewater treatment plants, to process that, to either reuse that water in things after it's been treated for irrigating lawns or golf courses or the like, or returning it to nature to be reused elsewhere. And so the infrastructure and the service that we're providing takes care of all of that so that you don't have to think about it. Next slide. For Western, this means that we rely on 3 key separate large treatment plants, depending on which region we're providing service to. So we have 2 that primarily are being used to provide service to our Riverside area customers. One we call RCRA, which is in the East Vale or Norco area that receives flows from really our La Sierra area of Riverside. And so we've got that treatment plant that we operate, but it's a joint effort among multiple cities and areas because it's a large regional treatment plant. We have our own treatment plant that we own and operate, which is by up here in the March Air Base area, which supplies a lot of the commercial area as well as the base. And then lastly, we have a treatment plant down in the Murrieta area that we call Syrah. It's another one of those joint regional operations that we do with other water districts in the area, and that provides a service for the Murrieta area. Next slide. The breakdown of costs for sewer is a little bit different than water. It's a very capital and operations and energy and chemical intensive service. And so roughly 40% of all of those costs are going to a handful of major costs that we have very little control over. Specifically, if we're being charged by one of these other treatment providers, paying our share of their costs and they set the rates, or things like energy or chemicals along those lines. The rest is, these are operationally intensive. There's tremendous amounts of equipment and moving equipment and pieces, all of them needing maintenance and operation. And so about half of it goes towards operating the plant. And then we have to invest in the future. And so replacing or improving this infrastructure takes things like debt or really large capital projects being paid out of savings accounts or reserves. And so about 15% goes to the long-term nature of the infrastructure. Next slide. With that, I'll turn it back to Craig.
Oh, thanks, Rick. Thanks for running through the numbers. You know, there's a couple other things that I'd like to touch on that come up in discussions. And, you know, one of the big ones that we get as a public agency, we're a nonprofit, but I think some people aren't always trusting that their dollar is being used efficiently and effectively. And, you know, I want to assure everyone that is here is that we take an enormous amount of pride in serving customers and making sure that we have the expertise necessary to run our systems and plan for the future. I mean, we're all about planning and investing for our future. A lot of customers are thinking about their bill on a month-to-month basis. We're concerned about that, and we're concerned about affordability. But the other hat that I have to wear is a long-term planning hat. And I have to make sure that we have enough water forever. And our grandkids have to be able to live in this service area. We have to accommodate growth. We have to accommodate changes in regulatory environs. So, you know, it is really important that we're good stewards of our money. And we go through great lengths to make sure that we do that. We're a nonprofit. Every dollar that we take in from a customer is going back into the water system in some way. And so whether it's jobs, whether it's building infrastructure, whether it's maintaining your quality of life as a customer, it's important to us. And we take that job very seriously here in the public sector. And, you know, we get a lot of questions about, you know, where's my money go? And I can assure you that it goes to where we say it's going. Let's go to the next slide. Financial integrity is really important. Western maintains a AAA credit rating by National Rating Agency. Actually, Rick and I were on a call earlier today with another rating agency where we're confirming our outstanding credit rating. And that is super important. That is a message to the public and to investors that we're good stewards of their money and we're good stewards of the system that we're operating and we're planning for the future. We do extensive independent third-party audits. We bring in independent firms. They look at national standards of what should be done with money at a water and sewer agency, and they report back, and they report to our board. They don't report back to me. They report to our board that we're meeting all audit standards. We've been super fortunate at Western. I'm really proud of the work that our finance team does. I'm really proud of our board of directors because this is so important to them. But we've actually won 19 years in a row financial reporting excellence awards. And that's comparing us to agencies all over the nation. And that's important because we need to reassure the public and present transparency in our finances to the public that when you're paying your water bill, you're getting what you're paying for. And it's really important that we're good financial stewards. Let's go to the next slide. Another question that we get all the time is the amount of money that we pay staff. And I just want to kind of hit this head on that we have to hire professionals to deliver the water supply in all conditions for all time. It takes very sophisticated programs, projects, capital investment, investment of our finances for returns, and operations and maintenance. And so we have to hire engineers. We have to hire certified public accountants. Our engineers are registered professional engineers. We have to ensure that we're paying appropriate dollars to those professionals. Our environmental compliance people are highly trained professionals. They're reporting all of our water quality information to the state to make sure that we're in compliance with all state and federal standards. Our water treatment and distribution professionals are certified by the state. You want people that are certified by the state in charge of your water quality and your distribution. You don't want just anyone. Backflow prevention so that your system is safe and there's not water that's flowing that doesn't meet our water quality standards some other way into your system. And obviously the maintenance of all the motors and blowers and pumps and valves, our sewer collection system, they're all trained, certified operators. And as you can imagine, we have to retain the best of the best. And if we're not paying competitive rates, we do salary surveys with the industry all the time. We present those to our board of directors. The board of directors approves increases in staffing levels. I go to the board of directors to ask for that. They make sure that it's well justified. But if we're not hiring good people, we're going to pay a lot more in the long run. We're going to get less efficient people. And so by hiring the best, we are ensuring that we can load them with a lot of work and we're way more efficient. We could hire contract labor, but then we're paying third-party entities profits, and we don't want to do that. We want to hire the best here. And if we don't pay them appropriately, they go other places. There are a lot of water agencies that would love to have Western employees. And trust me, the private sector wants Western employees. And so we have to be competitive in what we're paying personnel because we want them to be here and we want them to be here for a long time. And we don't want changeover in our staff because that costs us a lot of money. We have to train people and bring them on board, and that's expensive. So we're all about keeping professionals and keeping them here at Western. Next slide. Equally important, people will talk to us about oversight, and you're a governmental agency, and how do we know that you're doing the right thing? Well, here are our leaders. This is our board of directors. They represent the public. They're elected by the public. They are speaking for the public. The public can come to any one of our meetings and speak and make public comment. But this is the team that is the check and balance for our staff and what we're planning to do and what we're currently doing and what we'd like to do in the future. When you look at budgets, it has to be approved by the board. Projects have to be approved by the board. Staffing levels approved by the board. Rates have to be approved by the board. So this is the public oversight for what we do. And we have a board of directors that understands the water industry really well and really takes time to understand what we're presenting in front of them and make very good decisions on behalf of our million people that we serve. This is a very important part of the public sector process. Next slide. Preparing for tomorrow. This is a really big part of my job personally. With droughts and climate change, we're seeing wetter wet periods and drier dry periods. And the complexity of delivering water to our service area is getting more and more difficult all the time. We're bringing water from 500 miles away. And we have to figure out how to do that cost effectively. We're balancing local water. When is it time to get more local water? When is it time to use other people's water? When is it time to enter into long-term agreements to share resources? You know, we work with a lot of local water entities to share facilities, to collaborate on water supply agreements, to pool our funds to build groundwater storage programs. All of that is very, very complicated and super important to the customers. I think it happens behind the scenes and the customers don't know what's going on. But I do think the customers are trusting us and counting on us to be doing this work. So a huge part of what your investment in your monthly water bill and that is coming to us, and we figure out exactly how to take that investment monthly that you're making with us and proportioning that revenue so that we're looking at the future and we're serving for today. Next slide. All right, so let me hand it back over to Rick, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the rate adjustment program.
Great. So let's go to the next slide, please. So we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation what the specific rate increases were looking like for our average residential customer, but I'll go into a little bit more about what this overall plan entails. And so every year, the district goes through a rate increase on July 1st. And so we've done that every year, but there are intervals in which we plan ahead to determine what the next set of years looks like. So we go through the effort every 4 years. That's our practice. This helps us to both plan ahead and realizing what our revenues are to manage according to those. It also lets us communicate with our customers what they can expect, especially in an uncertain world where it seems we can't plan from day to day. At least knowing what our proposed increases are, especially for businesses, helps them to plan ahead. And so every 4 years. And so we're coming off the tail end of our last 4-year plan and planning for the next 4 years, which will begin on July 1st. The other part of this, which I think is important for everyone to understand, is just as much as we are governed by our elected board of directors, we also are regulated by specific law and how we go about and how much we can charge for our services. And so there's actually a piece of the California Constitution which is very strict in how we go about this, and all of it to the protection of our customers. And so that's what's reflected in our process and our practice. And so we call it Proposition 218. But what it really means is that, and you should have all received a notice, one, we get out ahead of all of our customers on exactly what the rates will be, and no more than that during this period. We also are governed to say that we can't charge anything more than the cost that it actually takes to provide the service. So there are no profits. Craig mentioned that as a government agency, whatever dollars we take in either get used today to pay for bills or tomorrow or the next day to pay for bills, all of it for your service. And so the question is just timing on when that money is used for service, but it doesn't leave the system. It goes back in to renewing it or providing the service. And so we don't charge anything more than what the cost is. And that applies between our customers as we go through this comprehensive process that was described. It's a multi-100-page document with complex calculations, which all goes to prove that one customer group isn't paying for another customer group. Everyone's paying the cost that it takes to provide water to them. And so that's important to us as well. And so the last piece, which is important, is we take it seriously that especially unplanned rate increases are difficult to manage on a household budget or for our businesses. And so you'll, as we saw in what was proposed, they're relatively steady, 7% per year or 6% per year increases. We tried very hard to get that level so people can plan around it versus what would have been something like a 14 or 15% rate increase in the first year that no one had expected as we're catching up on historic inflation coming out of COVID. And so we were able to bring that down and spread it out over the 4 years to make it more manageable for everyone. It's important that we pass these costs on every year. If we don't, it's kind of like using a household savings account to pay for everyday expenses. It's one thing if you're using it for a project at your home or something unexpected. But when you start using savings to pay your normal bills, eventually those run out and you're left with the bills at the end and having to come up with revenues. And so what that means for other agencies that have tried to do that is really unexpected, very significant, sudden rate increases for their customers when they just couldn't tolerate not passing it on anymore. And that is a big stressor to a community. So we're actively not doing that and trying to just pass on what we're seeing with our cost increases. Next slide, please. This one we saw, so this is just a reminder that if you're in the Riverside area with residential customers, it's about 7% per year. This follows what our cost increases are, especially if you remember, we're getting 7% increases from our provider. And if you're in the Murrieta area who doesn't have as much imported water, so the pressure isn't as significant down there, it's about 6%. And this is both for water and sewer. If you happen to have both services from us, it's less than this if you're just a water or a sewer customer. Again, between $10 and $15 a month, depending on the area that we're talking about. Next slide. And this slide is just to get to, as hard as this is, these pressures that we're facing are not ones that we're alone facing. This isn't a Western issue. Obviously, inflation is a local, a statewide, a national issue. It's more severe in certain areas, but the cost of imported water, which is necessary for this region, impacts us all. And so depending on which area, we've seen our brother and sister districts facing the exact same challenges as they need to pass on costs. And so everyone in this region is facing about the same, either rates they've already approved or are going through this process right now, whether that's 7, 8, or between 7 and 10% in certain areas. Next slide. Now we'll transition to both our outreach and the programs and support that we offer our customers. Grace?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Having heard all of the information on rates, we know that every dollar matters. So I wanted to remind everyone, next slide, that Western Water offers tools and support to help you manage your bill. We do have My Water Use portal where you can track water use in real near time and sign up for leak detection alerts. We also have rebates available and a low income assistance program. So we're here to support you. And if you need any information on that, you can reach out to us. Next slide. We've also heard from many of you that you want more communication from us, especially when it comes to rates. And we agree with you. Before launching this outreach effort, we conducted a survey to better understand how you prefer to receive that information. And so your feedback really has helped us guide when and where and how you receive information and how we connect with you. A lot of people that answered the survey said that they wanted information via email. So we really bulked that up during this process as well. And we understand that rates can be complex, especially when neighboring agencies have different structures and different water supplies. And so we're focused on making sure that this information is clear and accessible so you understand the costs, the value of the service that we provide. Next slide. So hopefully you have seen these rate notices that Rick discussed earlier. These are our 218 notices. Each Western Water customer received this in the mailbox. And they're very specific to your situation. For example, if you live in Riverside and receive sewer services from Western Water, your rate notice will reflect water and sewer. If you live in Riverside and receive just water and you receive sewer from a different agency, you will only receive the information with a water rate. The notice will also describe how to provide official feedback and in advance of the public hearing. So it'll describe how to do all of that, how you can protest the rate, how you can contact us if you want to leave any feedback for us. It describes it in that public hearing. Next slide. And to support this rate setting process, we launched a comprehensive outreach effort, including this session that you're in right now. We've mailed personalized notices. We've emailed thousands of our customers. We've answered questions online, posted on social media, and met with our regional leaders and attended community meetings as well. So this kind of shows you the breadth of our outreach efforts And it's all a larger part to make sure that you're informed and engaged throughout this process. Next slide. And here's some ways that you can stay engaged and stay informed. Review that notice that I described earlier. Visit our website, westernwaterca.gov/rates for full details, including our cost of service study that we talked about earlier in the presentation if you want to dig into that. Submit questions or comments online or by mail and attend our public hearing on June 4th. Next slide. And I'll turn it back over to Craig.
So what's next? So the culmination of all of this effort is a public hearing. So that's been noticed. Everybody, all of our customers will receive notification. We will be presenting our proposal to our board on June 4th at 6 p.m. in person at the Meridian office in Riverside. And that's where our board will consider adopting the rate proposal for water and sewer rates. So with that, that's the plan. That's all the information about how we got to those rates. And now let me turn it back over to our host, Sarah, to hopefully lead us through some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. And I just want to appreciate all of our customers that joined us today. We're here because we are your water provider. We're here to serve you. And as mentioned throughout the presentation, we're a public agency. So really it's your investment, your water bill, that's ensuring that safe, reliable, and available water it gets to you, your family, your neighbors, and your businesses now, and for your grandkids. So we really appreciate your engagement. I do want to open it up to questions. We did receive quite a few through our Slido feature and through the Zoom chat. So I'll go ahead and start with those. But feel free to raise your hand as we go along. I will see those. You can continue to put them in the chat. We'll also have staff monitoring. So the first question that came through, Craig, I'm going to turn this to you. Our customers want to know, why is Western's water so much more expensive than Riverside Public Utilities?
Oh, that's a popular question. And I have the answer. So we get this quite a bit. And, unfortunately, where you live really matters. And so Western, back in the 50s, was formed to bring imported water into the service area. Why? Because groundwater that the city of Riverside was producing was not plentiful enough for the growth that was happening up on the hill, and they didn't want to move water up on the hill. So Western was formed to import water into the region. And so that imported water comes through Metropolitan Water District. So that's what we were formed for. So 100% of our water was coming to Mission Grove, Woodcrest, in that area up on the hill from Northern California. And so obviously, if you're paying for water to come 500 miles, it's at a greater cost than if it's coming from right under your feet like RPU. And so RPU is 100% local groundwater. We were 100% imported water from 500 miles away. We've changed a lot. So since I've been here, in the last 12 years, the board challenged me and said, we need better local water supply. So we've changed from 100% imported water to a 60-40 split, 40% of local water. But like I was saying earlier, our local water is coming out of groundwater aquifers that are not under our feet. So it's still more expensive than RPU is paying for water right underneath their feet. So our water supply cost is greater. Our operational costs, very similar. We all operate a system, pumps, motors, reservoirs, treatment, all those things are the same. Fundamentally, it's just the water supply cost. And people say, well, Craig, go use more local water. Use RPU's water. Well, in the water world, people acquire water rights to groundwater, and they own the water rights. And so we have made deals where we've acquired rights from other agencies, other entities. We've leased water rights. We've shared water. We buy surplus water from the city of Riverside that they don't need, but we're paying for all that. So that gets compounded into what it costs us to deliver water and what our customers have to pay. So I know people don't like that. Everyone thinks that we should share equally, but the water world doesn't share, and it's really important where you live. And there's some areas that are still 100% imported water from Northern California. And so every water agency has a different mix of supply, and therefore they have different costs. So it's really hard to compare one agency against another. But I know here in Riverside, it is really difficult with RPU having 100% groundwater right under their feet compared to us having to import water.
So Craig, you mentioned that Western transitioned from 100% reliance on that imported water coming from over 500 miles away from Lake Oroville to now only 60%. Well, why can't we go to 100% if it's less expensive? Shouldn't
Yeah.
we just be pursuing more local water?
Yeah, if you're an engineer and you're a water resources engineer, that's priority one all the time.
Mm.
Find the least expensive water. Just go, people said, well, just develop more local water. Well, the problem is it's spoken for. There isn't an unlimited supply of groundwater. And as I said, there's a lot of state water rights that have to be accommodated. There's groundwater basins like the San Bernardino Basin that is legally adjudicated. So a court came in and decided how much water all the parties that pump from that basin get. Western just can't walk in and say, hey, we're going to take over and we're going to start pumping water. It's already been fully allocated. So the only way that we can get local water out of that is to either buy rights or lease rights or share with another entity to do that. So it's really hard to develop local water supply. We always have our ear to the ground for opportunities. I guarantee you that when we hear opportunity, we run it to ground and see if it'll be less expensive than imported water. That's our number one criteria. Or is it developing resiliency in our water system that is worth it for us to pay more than Metropolitan to develop more resiliency? But if local cheap water was available, we would have already grabbed it.
Got it. Thank you for that. I want to move on to the next question. Rick, this one's for you. Some of our customers might have seen an increase this last January. Can you talk about what that was and why are we looking at another in July?
Yeah, so January was an anomaly. We call it an off-cycle increase, and it's not typical, but it comes into play based on this overall need that we need to pass on the costs that we're seeing. So while we make every effort during this 4-year planning process to think ahead and have resiliency within our finances that we can sort of weather the storm if things are unexpected, some things are significant enough that we just need to pass on. And in this particular case, our provider, Metropolitan, went approved rate increases. Our main rate from them was 11%, which was not expected and well over what we had included in our last rate schedule and anticipated. So what we passed through on January was just to get even with what their rate increase was on a dollar for dollar basis. There was nothing else involved other than just passing on that increase that we saw from Metropolitan. So that was for January 1st, the increase from Metropolitan. They're raising rates every year, which was the rest of what I talked about when we're expecting 7% per year going forward. And that's what this 4-year rate proposal is all about.
Gotcha. I know that can be a common question that a lot of our customers have. And similarly, we hear, if you increase rates now, we don't have to raise them as high in the future. Some of our customers tuned in also 4 years ago and heard that same comment and are now seeing rates higher. Can you explain, Rick, a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is what I was mentioning earlier. If we don't pass on the cost of inflation every year, ultimately you have to pay the piper, and when your resources run out that you're paying those bills which keep coming in, when you do put through that rate increase, it's significant. We've seen other agencies do this, and they were 20, 30, 40% rate increases in a given year, and that's what we're actively trying to avoid. So which is why in our last rate cycle, we were just passing through the cost of inflation, but inflation was less back then. This was before COVID, or COVID hadn't had its impact. So we saw rate increases of 3 to 4%. I wish we were in that territory. I wish it was less, but that's not what we're seeing.
Me too.
And so that's why this time around is different.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I'm with you. I wish it was less as well, but the fact of the matter is our rates have to keep pace. What I'm hearing from you is so that we can avoid, even bigger spikes in a catch-up season. So we really appreciate you helping us understand that. Craig, I know you mentioned it a little bit during the presentation, but we're talking, in the last couple questions has really been about, why have we had pass-through rates? Why is the proposal what it is today versus the last time around when they were a little bit lower? Can you speak a little bit more about what we're doing to manage costs and keep them as low as possible?
Yeah, we've hit on inflation a lot, and we can't control inflation. Um, Now, however, we can play a role in trying to guide Metropolitan. So Metropolitan is the most significant increase. Um, it's interesting when you look at the rates, we're looking at 7% rate increases or 6% rate increases in Murrieta. Metropolitan's going up 10.5% this year and 11% next year. So how are we only doing 7%? Someone would ask. Well, um, that there's a lot of melding of other costs that are going in there that are keeping those rates a little bit lower. But you had asked me before about increasing local water supply. I think it's equally important that we are up at Metropolitan, and we are a Met member agency. Director Denstead sits on the Metropolitan board. I'm very active at Metropolitan. And if our most expensive supply of water that we have to participate in is going up faster than inflation, we have to try and do something. And so we're extremely active at Metropolitan to make sure that our dollars are spent well up there, and that Metropolitan actually is contemplating up to $40 billion of capital improvements over the next 20 years. Well, I want to make darn sure that $40 billion is necessary, because that's going to be on the backs of our customers and the other 20 million customers of Southern California. So we want to make sure they're building the right project at the right time that benefits our customers the best. Now, that's all very difficult because Metropolitan is 26 member agencies that are all planning together. You can imagine the arguments that are happening. But I think that we have an outstanding opportunity to help in the leadership of Metropolitan Water District to make sure that for our customers, we're building the least expensive regional projects with the highest bang for the buck, so that we're meeting today's demands. We're not overbuilding projects right now, but we're keeping an eye on the future so that we build enough projects to meet growth. And Riverside County is the fastest growing county in the state, one of the fastest growing in the nation. And so, our job is not to determine whether there's growth or not growth. Our job is to provide water. And so we don't want any of our customers in the future to not have a reliable supply of water. But we also don't want our customers to pay more than they need to pay for capital investment at this time. So it's a very difficult challenge of building the right project at the right time, and a lot of effort and thought and negotiating certainly goes into that process.
Thanks, Craig. So what I'm hearing from you is it's really our eye is on the long term and making sure we're not overspending now, but still preparing for delivering water to the customers that we have while preparing for the future. So with that in mind, can you elaborate a little bit um, on how we are preparing for the future, specifically as it relates to all the development going on in the region? We know Riverside County continues to be one of the fastest growing in the state, and I think the fourth fastest in the nation. So how are we preparing for that? How are we able to, or not, supply water with all of these growth demands, while at the same time continuing to ask our customers to save more and more?
Yeah, it's a complicated story for our customers. We've done a good job in outreach. Grace, you've done a great job. People know that they're supposed to be efficient with water and conserve water. But then they hear about growth, and it's a natural question. Why should I conserve How much more am I going to conserve? I'm cutting back the amount of water I'm using on my yard or indoors, but then you guys are allowing growth. So you're bringing in more demands, but you're asking me to use less. It's a very complicated relationship. It's kind of an inverse relationship. Everybody needs to be efficient with their water use. If you're not efficient with your water use today, I have to go out and I have to invest in more capital projects to bring water today. That's going to get more expensive. If I can delay those projects with water efficiency now by customers, and I can build those projects in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, with growth, our customer base is going to grow, and we're going to spread those capital costs over a wider base, and it's going to be more cost effective in the future. So your efficiency today is saving you money on capital investment. And your dollars that are going to Western and then to Metropolitan and functionally statewide are going towards building the right future capital projects at the right time. And I get this question all the time. Like, are we going to have enough water? Are we going to grow too much? And we have a lot of water. The water falls on the state. And we've all seen it in the last 3 years. We've had 3 relatively wet years. You hear stories on the news about water that's just flowing to the ocean and we're not capturing it. And I would agree with you 100% that we need smart capital investment to capture snowmelt and rainfall that's happening in the mountains, put it in reservoirs, put it in groundwater basins, transport it across this great state of ours so that we have water in dry periods to sustain what is now the 4th largest economy in the world. That takes smart investment and that takes statewide collaboration. We spend an enormous amount of time here at Western planning that statewide collaboration, and that is for your future.
Thanks, Craig. So it sounds like what I'm hearing as a resident, me personally in the area, if I'm being efficient with my use, I'm actually saving money on my bill today because I'm using less, but I'm also not forcing you as my water provider to overly expand the system. And that this new development coming in is paying for its access to a system that has the water available. It just hasn't built the system yet. So I think that's really helpful for our customers to understand.
Well, and I think, Sarah, I'll just give a little bit more oversharing maybe, but Western adopted a budget-based rate revenue structure years ago. I don't know, 14, 15 years ago. I can't remember the exact date right now. That budget, it's a water budget that goes to every single user. If you stay within your budget, you pay the lowest cost of water. When sales drop or sales rise, when the hydrology in the state is dry or the hydrology is wet, we don't get fluctuations in our rates. So we have a very stable rate system. And that rate system has driven water use efficiency here at Western. And it's allowed us to provide the same overall amount of water to our customers that we were providing 10 years ago. So we haven't had to build additional water supply projects. That saved everyone money. Now, go to Metropolitan Water District and their rate program and the way that their board developed rates decades ago, three decades ago. They based it on sales. Revenue is generated by sales. Their costs are fixed, but their sales are variable. So when they sell lots of water, they get lots of revenue and things are good. When they sell less water, they get less revenue and they have to raise rates. And that's where they are right now because everybody's more efficient with water. We've had some wet years, so people have not been irrigating outside as much. And because of their rate structure, their rates are at 10 and 11% rate increases. We don't want to see that at Western. So, we're up at Metropolitan trying to develop a new rate structure so customers aren't punished if it's a wet year or a dry year or by conserving. That's not fair to the customers. So we think we've developed a fair system. We want to change the system at Metropolitan. Very complicated answer, but it's part of the challenge of having to get water from other entities and having to be a player in the statewide water system instead of just having groundwater under your feet.
Great. I appreciate that extra detail. I'm going to move a little bit into the nitty gritty. We got a question specifically related to the proposal at hand. And this customer mentioned that, the proposal includes our operational costs. So we've talked a lot about the costs imposed on us, right? So the bill we pay just goes straight out the door to our imported water source or energy. But what about our own operations? Does this proposal include the salaries of office staff? And if so, how does that impact the increase? So I'm going to turn that one over to Rick to help us understand that.
Thanks, Sarah. Great question. So uh, the rates include all of our costs, as we mentioned. The breakdown of what those generally are, about half of those being the cost of purchased water, and roughly about half, and depending on what we're talking about, is operations and maintenance. Uh, that includes all of our operations and maintenance. So that includes the energy that we talked about, which is a big part of that, as well as the chemicals that we talked about, the equipment to replace, supplies, and everything else. But in that is salaries. And so generally speaking, and this is a bit different for a water district than what most people encounter and experience with other types of governments that they're used to. Our total budget is about 20% salaries and benefits for our staff. So it's a part of it, but it's not the lion's share by any means. And so where we have to stay competitive with salaries and benefits or see costs on that side, as Craig mentioned, they get put in here, but it's not a primary factor in what's going into this rate increase compared to something like a school district, a city, or a county that relies primarily on staff. Their budgets are 70, 80, 90% salaries and benefits. Ours tends to be purchase water, energy, and constructing things going into our primary cost drivers.
Great. Thanks, Rick. I think that was really clear that we have about 20% going to the staff running, supporting, making sure our water system is well maintained and that your water quality is high. Another question we got was that, how will we report out to our customers on how these rates are being used and what kinds of investments these increases are supporting? So Craig, maybe you can take that one and others can chime in.
Well, on reporting, I think they're trying to get to, are we transparent with our revenues? And like I talked about in the presentation, we do an annual audit by an independent auditor. We win awards on how we present the material. The material is given to the board on a regular basis. We have they get informational items at every board meeting about our expenditures, how we're tracking compared to the budget. So I think the financial transparency is well documented, and it's just an ethic here at Western. Now, the other side, which is included in all this, is the incorporation of the planning staff and the planning efforts, and that's all included in there. So the very professional staff that we have that are very smart on water issues are encompassing all these efforts to make sure that we have a reliable water supply in the future. Now, we're going to have to build projects. We'll continue to build projects. Metropolitan will continue to build projects. The trick is, how are we going to make sure that we build those projects cost effectively? And really the hardest decision is what projects to build. When do you launch into a project that's going to take 20 years to build to provide water for 20 years out to 60 years out? That is built on the backs of all of our customers. And sometimes the benefits are not seen until kind of the next generation. But that's been a challenge in water forever. And that's why it's difficult to be a board member sometimes, because you have to make those generational investments to make sure that we have enough water for the future.
Thanks, Craig. I think we can also add that, or as a reminder to all of those joining us today, is that as a not-for-profit public agency, Western Water can only charge the true cost of service. And so in terms of reporting, we go through an extensive process to develop what those are and have made that available online at westernwaterca.gov/rates. And so that's an opportunity for our customers to really get a feel for what all of our costs are and what is reflected in this proposal. I think you can also find our capital improvement projects available online. So if you want to check out all the ways we're maintaining and reinvesting your dollars right back into the system, it's all available on our website. I would encourage everyone to check that out. We have time for just a couple more questions. I know a few continue to roll in, so I do want to make it clear that any that we're not able to address during this session, staff will work to get back to you. We also have some in-person sessions coming up, one tonight in Riverside and one tomorrow in Murrieta, and a variety of ways to get engaged. But let's continue on these last two. The question was that our customer got a notice about their rates, but it was a little confusing. What should they focus on? And how do they find their specific rates on our website? So I'll pass this over to Rick, and then maybe Grace can chime in terms of how to find the information on our website.
Yeah, so the first key is that the notice that was sent to you is was mentioned earlier is specific to you. So that's the rate notice that you're looking for. You can get all of the rates that apply to our whole service area if you go to our website, with it, the cost of service study and what have you. And so probably the bottom line thing to say is if you're a typical customer using normal amounts for either inside or outdoor use, you don't have a multi-acre property or something like that, your bill impact's expected to be in that $10 to $15 a month range. That's the best answer I could give. The other one is if there's any confusion at all, to call our customer service, and they will walk through your exact account any time of day that we're open and go through exactly how it's anticipated to impact you. That's if you want a lasered in answer, that's the best way to get the specific answer for your account.
And also, Rick, I'll add new probably this week. We'll have a tool on our website that will make it easier for customers. They can enter their address and then their rate notice specific to them will pop up for them so they can view it on our website. So that should come at the end of this week, early next week.
And I think, Rick, that was a great point. Western Water staff really are here to serve you. And so we have teams available to really get into your impacts. And so we're here for you. Give us a call, shoot us an email. We'll make sure any questions that you have about that notice you received, that we can answer those for you. And I want to end on this because I think it's really relevant with what we're all feeling today in this current climate of uncertainty. Myself, all of us on this call, customers are really tired of cost increases generally. There's so much language about tariffs and inflation. And, one customer noted that people are just too busy to come in and comment. So, Grace, can you share what are the other ways customers can be heard without writing a formal letter?
Yeah, I mentioned a few in the presentation. You can come to the public hearing on June 4th and just speak to the board how you feel about the rates. You can also contact the board directly. We left their phone number and their emails in the chat. And so you can send them a letter. It doesn't have to be formal. It can just be a quick note that comments how you feel about this. And then you can also contact our customer service team. We'll put the email and the phone number in the chat as well.
Sarah, can I add on to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Grace and her team and Sarah's team in customer service are very motivated to share comments. And, I hear the comments. So Grace and Sarah both share what we're hearing from our customers. We're very in tune with what the customers care about, what's important to them. And I like to hear it. We're representing the customers. Sarah said it earlier. Every dollar that you pay is how we run the business. And that's what we run the business with. It is super important for us to give amazing customer service. And I think customer service is spending your dollars appropriately to make sure that we're very responsible and professional about the services we provide. And we need to hear from you. And if we're not doing a good job of explaining where your money's going or explaining why we're doing things, we need to do better. So we really like it when people share and participate. And Sarah's team and Grace's team are great at following up with the customers. So feel free to weigh in. And as Grace said, just tell us how you feel about it.
Craig, I think that was a great way to end our session today. Western Water really does work hard to go above and beyond the minimum requirements to consider rate adjustments. This is something our board will be considering in June, but it was important that we offered this opportunity to you so you could learn more, get your questions answered, and provide staff an opportunity to listen to where you're coming from. So appreciate you joining us today. We value your time and look forward to continuing our partnership together in serving you reliable, high quality water and wastewater services. So with that, I hope you have a great afternoon, and we'll continue to provide information in the coming months.